back with part 3 of the love story between John and Mary, a look at the love story between Christ and the church. Oh, it's so exciting. So we left off at the banquet table, the engagement table, where Mary and John are expressing their desires through the symbolism of taking the cup. And so Mary has just drank of John's cup. She has just taken John's life as her own at a feast where Mary's parents are overseeing. Now, after the dinner, it was customary for the groom to depart, actually, to eat the dinner with his bride and her family, and then he would leave and not return. He would not return and see Mary. There was no engagement time. They're actually married at this point. But it was his job then to leave and go and build, as we heard in video 1, as his brothers had done, a place for he and Mary to live adjacent to his father's house. The bride would be taken into the groom's family. That was the tradition. So John is going to leave the banquet and go and prepare a place for Mary to come live. And depending on how far away he lived or how big of a place he was building would depend on how long he was gone. So every bride knew that if her groom was back in a week, she was moving in a shack. But really, they would go and their families would kick in, and it would take a while to do it. But by the custom, the bride would never know when the groom would be returning. So her time between the engagement banquet and the coming of her groom was to be spent in preparation. And so the first thing that Mary and her mother would do is go get fine white linen, which is the sign of purity. Go to the Revelation scriptures and read about linen and those in white robes. So Mary would be donning white linen wedding dress. She would also become veiled during this time to signify that she belonged to someone already, and she would stop carrying water to the well. The family would hire someone to do that, as her sole purpose was to prepare for the coming groom. That she would go through beauty treatments. She would do spa, what we would call a day of spa, they would do in her home. She would begin to soak in fragrances and spices. She would have flax put in her hair would be brushed, the dress was being made, and everything was about Mary being prepared. And meanwhile, John would be doing all the work. John would be off at his father's house working on this addition to the home to build their future home together. But the two would not see each other. John would not come back to the city. He would stay there and do that work. Now, some brides in the past would get tired of waiting for a groom. I mean, 9 months could go by and they wouldn't have any indication that their groom would be coming, but not Mary. Not Mary. She would look up at night. She was on the second story of their home, and she would look up at the stars at night and just take a deep breath and think, one night he'll come for me and he'll take me to the life I've always dreamed of. And she waited and listened for the shofar. Now, John had chosen a best man at this time when he went back to his father's house, and they had sacrificed a ram to the Lord, taken the ram's horn, and his best man would hang on to this and wait until the night that John would come to him and say, tonight's the night. We're going to get married. And then his best friend would blow the shofar, and that sound would go across the village and let everyone know that John and the wedding party were headed into town. And that was typically done at midnight. Now, Mary chose bridesmaids, virgins, and if you'll have to look up my video about the virgin bridesmaids that didn't, the 5 wise and unwise, and the unwise ones that didn't have oil for their lamps. But Mary's bridesmaids would light these lamps in their windows so that when the bridal party came at night, they would see the windows that were lit. And when the shofar blew, these bridesmaids would wake up, grab their lamps, and go out to meet the groom as he was coming in. They would go literally out with their lights shining to meet the groom. So you have John his best man has the shofar waiting to blow it, and Mary's virgin bridesmaids are waiting for the groom to come. And every night, Mary continues to go to bed, one eye half open, listening for the sound of that shofar and her groom's coming. And finally, one night, the horn blows. I'm going to stop there. The last video, I'm going to do it. It will be number 4.